ancient army of warriors has been quietly conquering the world. Wherever small battalions of China's famous terracotta warriors are exhibited, they win over a new legion of fans.
It's a massive army made of clay, thousands of life-sized figures slowly emerging from the ground, where they've remained hidden for over 2,000 years. But a recent scan of the Terracotta Army revealed something no one was prepared for. The team behind the discovery didn't say a word at first. They checked the data once, twice, 3 times before going public, because what they found shouldn't have been possible. In 2023, advanced quantum-enhanced imaging sensors were used to scan more than 8,000 clay soldiers, figures that had stood in complete darkness for over 2 millennia. Researchers expected to study craftsmanship, maybe confirm how these statues were made. But what came back left the entire room frozen. The scans revealed distinct human faces, not repeated designs or artistic patterns, but incredibly precise biological features. Faces so detailed, they looked like they were modeled after real individuals. Then things got even stranger. The same scans uncovered patterns of damage across the pits, patterns that closely resemble the aftermath of a coordinated military attack. Not random destruction, but something organized, almost like an army had been struck down. And beneath it all, something even more unsettling was detected. Deep underground, slowly seeping through the soil, were traces of liquid mercury, exactly where ancient historical texts claimed rivers of mercury had been placed over 2,000 years ago. Every one of these discoveries was real, and none of them were supposed to exist. The discovery that almost didn't happen. Spring, 1974. The farmland outside Xi'an had dried out. The earth was cracked, water was scarce, and local farmers were running out of options. So a group of villagers decided to dig a well. Among them was Yang Jifa, a man who had worked that land his entire life. He knew the soil better than anyone. Every rock, every root, every layer beneath his feet. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to uncover. About 15 feet down, his shovel struck something hard, but not quite like stone. At first he assumed it was just broken pottery, the kind of debris that occasionally turned up in the area. But as he kept digging, something rolled out of the dirt. It was a head, a human-sized clay head. Its hollow eyes seemed to stare straight at him. The detail was so lifelike that for a split second, Yang thought it was real. Then more pieces appeared, a torso covered in carefully sculpted armor, each plate individually carved, arms frozen in position as if reaching for weapons that had long since vanished. Nearby, bronze arrowheads lay buried in the soil, still sharp enough to cut skin after more than 2,000 years underground. And here's the unbelievable part. Yang had no idea that beneath his feet, stretching across acres of land, stood an entire army. More than 8,000 life-size soldiers, arranged in perfect formation, all facing east, toward enemies that no longer existed. At first, the farmers simply piled the fragments at the edge of the field. Some of the bronze pieces were even sold off as scrap for a few coins. The discovery might have been lost forever, if not for one man. A local cultural official named Zhao Kangmin heard rumors about strange statues being found near a well. He came to investigate, and the moment he saw the fragments, he knew this was something extraordinary. Within months, excavation teams arrived. What they uncovered was so massive that the government had to build an entire museum complex just to house it. When the first pit was cleared, it looked like a battlefield frozen in time. Rows of soldiers standing silently, heads raised, armor detailed with incredible precision, as if they were still waiting for an order that would never come. But here's the truth. What those early archaeologists uncovered was only the beginning. The real mystery stayed buried for another 50 years, waiting for technology that didn't exist yet. And when that technology finally arrived, it didn't just answer questions, it created entirely new ones. What the quantum scans revealed. For decades, researchers studied the Terracotta Army using traditional methods, photographs, manual measurements, careful excavation with brushes and tools. Important work, but limited. They were only seeing the surface. Then, everything changed. Dr. Zhang Wei, a lead imaging specialist at the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology, led a team that introduced quantum-enhanced sensors to analyze the statues. These weren't ordinary scanners. They operate at an incredibly fine scale, measuring how light interacts with matter at the atomic level. Imagine combining an X-ray, a CT scan, and chemical analysis into one powerful system. The result? Data that goes far beyond what the human eye can see, revealing hidden structures, internal compositions, and microscopic details locked inside the clay for over 2,000 years. Her team collected more than 10 terabytes of data from thousands of statues. Processing it took months. Multiple AI systems were used to verify and cross-check the results. And when the first conclusions appeared, Dr. Zhang didn't rush to announce them. She reviewed the data carefully, then she ordered it to be checked again, and then again. Only after 3 full verifications did she agree to present the findings. When she finally spoke, the room fell completely silent. They had expected patterns, repeated designs, signs of mass production, shortcuts you'd expect when creating thousands of figures under pressure. Instead, they found individuality. They found human uniqueness. AI-driven analysis compared thousands of facial features, the angles of ears, the structure of cheekbones, the spacing of eyes, the shape of noses. And what it revealed changed everything. These weren't copies. They were individuals, fractions of a millimeter. That's the level of detail the system was analyzing. Chin depth, cheekbone structure, the spacing between the eyes, even the subtle folds of the eyelids. The AI wasn't built to admire art. It was designed to detect repetition. The shortcuts any ancient workshop would almost certainly use when producing thousands of figures. But instead of repetition, it found the opposite. Dr. Marcus Chen, a forensic anthropologist from Stanford University who assisted with the facial analysis, reviewed the data and went completely quiet. For nearly a full minute, he didn't say a word. Then he finally spoke. He explained that the tiny asymmetries in the faces were too precise to be imagined. The variations in ear shapes, jaw alignment, bone structure, these weren't artistic choices. They were biological markers, real human features captured in clay. In other words, these weren't generic statues. They were based on actual people. Let that sink in. The emperor didn't just order symbolic guardians for his tomb. He ordered portraits, thousands of them, real soldiers who had once served under him, their identities preserved in clay and buried where no one was ever meant to see them again. And that raises a chilling question. Why go to such extreme lengths for an army that would remain hidden forever? What was he really trying to create? If you're into discoveries that most people never hear about, make sure you're subscribed, because what the scans revealed next is even harder to explain. Signs of an ancient attack. The data didn't just highlight what survived. It revealed something far more disturbing. What had been destroyed. Across multiple pits, the sensors picked up damage patterns that didn't match natural causes. Not earthquakes, not collapsing roofs, not slow decay over time. This damage was intentional, precise, almost surgical. Impacts were concentrated on specific parts of the body. Heads had been violently removed, not knocked off by falling debris, but struck from deliberate angles. Limbs were broken at joints, exactly where you'd aim to disable a living opponent. Torsos showed fracture patterns consistent with weapon strikes, not structural collapse. And here's the detail that really stands out. The destruction wasn't evenly spread. It was focused. High-ranking figures, officers, chariot commanders, showed the most severe damage. Meanwhile, many lower-ranking soldiers were left relatively untouched. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a conflict archaeologist from the University of Cambridge, reviewed the findings. When she reached her conclusion, she paused, carefully choosing her words. This wasn't random vandalism. It looked like a coordinated military action. Someone had entered those pits with a clear objective: eliminate leadership first. Exactly how you would dismantle a real army. But here's where the mystery deepens. Historical records do mention that the tomb complex was attacked shortly after the emperor's death in 210 BC during a period of civil unrest. But think about it. Why would rebels, fighting for survival, spend time destroying clay statues? Why not take the valuable weapons and leave? Why systematically target figures that posed no physical threat? Why focus on officers over ordinary soldiers? Some researchers are now considering a far more unsettling possibility: that the attackers believed these figures were more than symbolic, that somehow the army was thought to hold real power, something dangerous even after death. In that view, this wasn't just destruction. It was a second battle, a fight against something they believed could still harm them. But even that isn't the strangest part of the story, because beneath the burial mound, something is still happening, right now. The poison beneath the tomb. At the center of the site stands a massive earthen mound rising nearly 250 feet, about the height of a 20-story building. Beneath it lies the emperor's sealed burial chamber, a structure so hazardous it has never been opened. Ancient historian Sima Qian described what was hidden inside. According to his writings, the chamber contained rivers and seas, not of water, but of liquid mercury. A ceiling painted to reflect the night sky, complete with constellations, a miniature landscape of the empire below, and mechanical traps designed to strike intruders. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as exaggeration, stories meant to scare grave robbers. Until modern science stepped in, soil tests around the mound revealed mercury concentrations far beyond natural levels, in some places reaching around 1,400 parts per billion. To put that into perspective, normal levels in that region are only a fraction of that. And here's the key detail. These elevated readings have remained consistent for decades, confirmed by multiple independent studies since the 1980s. This isn't pollution from modern industry. It's something ancient, slowly leaking upward through the soil for over 2,000 years. In fact, mercury is still escaping from the tomb today, not as a theory, not as speculation. Right now, air measurements above the mound show mercury vapor levels significantly higher than the surrounding environment, and the areas with the highest concentrations align perfectly with where ancient texts claimed those underground rivers would be. Which means one thing: what was written 2,000 years ago might not have been a legend after all. The readings line up almost perfectly with where ground-penetrating scans indicate the central burial chamber lies. Geological studies trace the mercury back to ancient cinnabar mines once controlled by the Qin state, mines that historical records confirm were active during the emperor's reign. Researchers now believe the builders may have used over 100 metric tons of liquid mercury. That's more than 200,000 pounds of one of the most toxic substances known in the ancient world. And here's the part no one likes to say out loud. If those ancient accounts are even partly true, breaking into that chamber without extreme precautions could release toxic vapor strong enough to cause severe neurological damage or even death within minutes. For over 2,000 years, this tomb hasn't been protected by guards or walls alone, but by poison. So why hasn't it been opened? Because the mercury might only be the first layer of defense, a fortress beneath the ground. Modern scanning has mapped what lies below without disturbing it, and what's down there doesn't look like a simple tomb. It looks like a fortified complex. At its core is a massive rectangular structure surrounded by multiple defensive layers. The first barrier is a brick wall about 13 feet high, enclosing a huge area. Beyond that sits an even thicker shield, a densely packed earthen wall stretching up to 30 or 40 yards thick in places. It's not just construction, it's protection. The main chamber itself is enormous, roughly 260 feet long, over 160 feet wide, and nearly 50 feet tall. That's larger than 2 basketball courts placed side by side, with ceilings reaching the height of a multi-story building. And it lies about 100 feet beneath the surface. Engineers even designed advanced drainage systems and what appears to be an underground dam to prevent flooding. This wasn't just built to bury someone, it was built to last forever. But here's where things get even more unsettling. Radar and magnetic surveys have detected dense metal zones and narrow passageways that don't resemble ceremonial corridors. They look like choke points, areas designed to trap or control movement, almost like defensive kill zones. When asked about opening the tomb, Dr. Zhang didn't sugarcoat her response. She admitted that current technology may not be capable of entering the chamber safely, and might not be for another 100 years. Then she added something even more surprising. Maybe we shouldn't open it at all. Let that sit with you for a moment. The person who understands this site better than almost anyone alive isn't even sure it should be disturbed. So what kind of ruler would build something like this? To answer that, we have to go back to the beginning. The mind behind the empire. Long before China was unified, the land was divided into 7 warring states. Constant conflict defined everyday life. Cities burned, alliances collapsed overnight, and assassination was always a real threat. Into that chaos stepped a young boy named Ying Zheng, who became king of Qin at just 13 years old after his father's death. While others tried diplomacy, he chose conquest. One by one, rival kingdoms fell to his armies. Entire populations were relocated. Nobility was executed or enslaved. His campaigns were relentless, calculated, and brutally effective. By 221 BC, he had done what no one before him could. He unified the region into a single empire. But he didn't call himself king. He created a new title, emperor. He named himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. To him, this wasn't just a victory, it was a reset of history itself. No equals, no rivals, no going back. He standardized everything: currency, measurements, even the written language. Roads were redesigned so that every cart fit perfectly. Armies could move faster than ever before. It was total control over an entire civilization. But there was one thing he couldn't control: death. And as he grew older, that reality began to consume him. Court alchemists spoke of immortals and magical elixirs hidden on distant islands. Massive expeditions were sent out in search of eternal life. None returned. Some may have started new lives far away, others likely perished chasing myths. Desperate, the emperor turned to alchemy. He consumed countless potions, many of them containing mercury, which was believed at the time to hold life-giving power. Ironically, the substance he trusted to make him immortal was slowly poisoning him. It damaged his body, his mind, his nervous system. He died in 210 BC, around the age of 49, most likely killed by the very thing he believed would save him. But he had already prepared for death. If he couldn't rule forever above ground, he would create a world where he could rule forever below it. The unsettling truth. The new scans force us to reconsider everything. These aren't generic statues made from molds. They appear to be individual representations, possibly modeled after real soldiers. Thousands of unique faces, preserved in clay, standing in formation for over 2,000 years. The damage patterns suggest that ancient attackers may have treated them as more than objects. They didn't just break statues, they targeted them like enemies, as if they believed the army was somehow real. The mercury readings confirm that what was once dismissed as legend may actually be true. Those rivers described in ancient texts appear to still exist, still contained, still slowly leaking even today. And at the center of it all lies a sealed chamber that no one has been able to enter, not because we lack interest or resources, but because the defenses may simply be too effective. Some researchers are beginning to consider an even more unsettling idea. What if this tomb wasn't just built as a monument? What if it was designed as a continuation of his rule, an underground empire, complete with landscapes, defenses, and an army, all preserved in a state meant to last forever? If that's true, then Qin Shi Huang is exactly where he intended to be, at the center of his empire, guarded by his army, surrounded by toxic rivers, and still beyond our reach. So here's the question. Should we open the tomb, knowing the risks, the potential damage, and the possibility that we're not ready for what's inside? Or has the first emperor earned the right to keep his secrets buried forever? Tell me what you think in the comments. I read them all. And if this changed the way you see what's hidden beneath that mound, the mercury still rising, the chamber still sealed, the emperor still waiting. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.